Picture this, a sprawling airport terminal pulsating with the restless hum of travelers darting to their gates, their faces etched with the urgency of tight schedules. The air is a cacophony of rolling suitcases, the murmur of hurried farewells, and the sharp blare of a delayed flight announcement echoing through the cavernous space. At gate C9, a striking woman stands poised at the boarding counter, her elegant navy coat and sharp heels a stark contrast to the harried crowd around her. Suddenly, a burly airport police officer storms forward, his voice slicing through the noise like a blade. "This ID is fake, ma'am. Step aside, or you're going in cuffs." The crowd gasps, a collective intake of breath as phones rise like a wave, capturing every second of the confrontation. The woman's eyes narrow, her expression shifting from shock to a steely determination that promises retribution. What she does next will unravel a scandal that shakes the airline world, ignite a nationwide movement for justice, and leave every single person watching stunned beyond belief. Trust me, this is a story you'll want to hear to the very end. It was a chilly Thursday morning at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, one of America's busiest travel hubs, where the terminal thrummed with a vibrant, almost electric energy. The sprawling space was a kaleidoscope of motion and sound, a microcosm of the world itself. Business travelers in tailored suits tapped away on laptops at overpriced coffee kiosks, their brows furrowed as they reviewed last-minute presentations. Families juggled strollers and fast food wrappers, parents barking orders to keep their kids in line while balancing overstuffed diaper bags. College students hauled oversized backpacks adorned with travel patches, souvenirs from gap-year adventures, laughing loudly as they shared memes on their phones. Overhead screens flickered with gate updates, their neon glow reflecting off the polished marble floors, while the aroma of cinnamon rolls from a nearby Auntie Anne's mingled with the faint, acrid scent of jet fuel wafting through the open gates. The multilingual chatter, English, Spanish, Korean, French, Arabic, wove a tapestry of global connection, punctuated by the occasional wail of a toddler, the chime of a boarding call, or the sharp reprimand of a TSA agent directing passengers to remove their shoes. Amid this whirlwind stood Lauren Harper, a 42-year-old African-American executive whose presence commanded attention without trying. Dressed in a navy trench coat over a charcoal pantsuit with polished leather boots and a silk scarf tied with effortless grace, she exuded the confidence of someone who'd navigated corporate boardrooms and international negotiations alike. Her carry-on, a sleek black roller bag with a discreet Horizon Airlines tag, rested beside her as she balanced her phone against her ear, reviewing a tablet with her free hand. "Yes, Tom, I've got the final proposal for the Dubai summit," she said, her voice smooth but firm, cutting through the ambient noise like a beacon of calm. "No, I'm still at the gate. Tell the team I'll be there by evening. We're locking this deal tonight." Her tone carried the authority of a leader accustomed to high stakes, yet there was a warmth that hinted at her approachable nature, a quality that had earned her loyalty from employees and partners alike. To the untrained eye, Lauren was just another business traveler preparing for an international flight, blending into the sea of suits and carry-ons. But a closer look revealed the details of her success. The custom-engraved Mont Blanc pen in her hand, the subtle gleam of a diamond stud earring catching the light, and the faint smile that played on her lips as she ended the call. A text pinged on her phone, the screen lighting up with a message from her chief operating officer, Sarah. "Safe journey, Lauren. The board's counting on you to seal the deal. Don't let the jet lag slow you down." It was a playful jab, but also a reminder of the $2 billion partnership she was flying to finalize in Dubai, a deal that could redefine Horizon Airlines' global presence. She tucked the phone into her purse, a sleek leather satchel that matched her outfit perfectly, and glanced at the digital sign above. Horizon Airlines Flight 309, Los Angeles LAX, to Dubai, DXB, via New York, JFK. Horizon Airlines, under Lauren's visionary leadership, had risen from a modest regional carrier to a global contender celebrated for its cutting-edge sustainability initiatives, luxurious cabins, and award-winning customer service. Passengers raved about the complimentary champagne in first class, the plant-based meal options that catered to every dietary need, and the crew's attentiveness. Flight attendants who remembered your name and made sure your coffee was just the right temperature. The airline had won Best Customer Experience at the Global Aviation Awards 3 years running, a testament to Lauren's obsession with quality. What few knew was that Lauren Harper wasn't just a frequent flyer. She was the founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of Horizon Airlines. She'd poured 2 decades into building the company, overcoming skepticism about her age, gender, and race to turn it into a powerhouse that rivaled legacy carriers. Lauren preferred to travel incognito, using her real name but avoiding the spotlight. It gave her a front-row seat to the passenger experience, from check-in delays to in-flight service, and informed her strategic decisions. Today's trip to Dubai was critical, not just for the merger, but also to assess Horizon's new transatlantic route, a pet project she'd championed to connect the U.S. with emerging markets in the Middle East. As she adjusted her scarf, Lauren's mind wandered to her journey, a story she rarely shared, but one that shaped every decision she made. Raised in Compton, California, in a single-parent household, she'd grown up watching her mother work 2 jobs to keep the lights on, a seamstress by day, a cashier by night. Lauren had been a shy, bookish child, often retreating to the local library to escape the chaos of her neighborhood, where the sound of sirens was as familiar as the ice cream truck's jingle. It was there, surrounded by worn paperbacks, that she discovered stories of trailblazers, women like Madam C.J. Walker and Oprah Winfrey, who'd defied the odds to build empires. Those stories lit a fire in her, a determination to rise above her circumstances. She'd worked her way through UCLA on scholarships and part-time jobs, majoring in business administration with a minor in aviation studies, a nod to her childhood fascination with planes. Her first job out of college was as a junior analyst at a struggling regional airline, where she quickly made a name for herself by streamlining operations and boosting profits. But the corporate world wasn't kind to a young black woman with big ideas. She'd faced microaggressions, dismissive colleagues, and outright discrimination, like the time a senior executive joked that she'd only been hired to fill a diversity quota. Lauren had smiled through the insult, but inside she vowed to prove them wrong. Horizon Airlines was her redemption, a company built on inclusivity, innovation, and a relentless commitment to excellence. If the Dubai deal succeeded, it would open Asia-Pacific routes, cementing her legacy as one of the most influential women in aviation. The day began innocently enough, a routine Lauren had perfected over years of frequent travel. The intercom crackled with an announcement, the voice slightly distorted but clear. Horizon Airlines Flight 309 to Dubai via New York, now boarding at Gate C9. Lauren joined the priority line, her boarding pass and driver's license in hand, the plastic card slightly worn from years of use but still crisp. The security checkpoint cleared her with a nod, the agent barely glancing at her documents before waving her through. At the gate, a cheerful agent with a name tag reading Jessica scanned her documents, her smile bright and practiced. Then a jarring beep broke the rhythm, a deep, ominous tone that made Jessica's smile falter. She tried again, her fingers hovering over the scanner. The same sound echoed, a grating buzz that seemed to hang in the air. 1 second, Ms. Harper," Jessica said, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she squinted at the screen. "The system's flagging something. Let me check manually." Lauren nodded, unfazed, her posture relaxed. "No problem. It's probably a glitch." Jessica's brow furrowed as she peered at the screen, her lips pursing in confusion. "Everything looks fine, but the digital scan isn't matching. Hang on." She stepped aside, whispering into a headset, her eyes darting to Lauren with a mix of apology and concern. Lauren waited, shifting her weight slightly, her boots tapping softly against the tiled floor. She was no stranger to minor hiccups, random checks, scanner errors, the occasional pat-down. They were part of the travel grind, especially for someone who logged over 200,000 miles a year. But as the minutes stretched, a faint unease crept in, a whisper of intuition that this wasn't a simple fix. The agent returned with a TSA officer, a stocky man with a clipboard, his expression neutral, but his posture tense, as if braced for conflict. "Ma'am, could you step over here?" the officer asked, gesturing to a roped-off area near the gate, a makeshift interrogation zone cordoned off with velvet ropes. His tone was polite, but there was an undercurrent of suspicion, a sharpness that made Lauren's stomach tighten. Lauren's pulse quickened, though her face remained calm, her expression a mask of professionalism. "Of course," she said, following him, her carry-on rolling smoothly behind her. The crowd parted, their glances a mix of curiosity and concern, some travelers pausing mid-step to watch the unfolding drama. It wasn't uncommon to see someone pulled aside, but the air felt charged, as if the terminal itself sensed something brewing, a storm gathering on the horizon. In the cordoned-off space, Lauren stood with quiet dignity, her carry-on at her side, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She reminded herself to stay composed, to breathe deeply and evenly. She had all the proper documents, a valid California driver's license, a boarding pass with her name in bold print, and a passport in her bag as backup, its pages stamped with visas from over 30 countries. This was a glitch, she told herself, a minor inconvenience, nothing more. She'd be on her way soon, sipping a glass of sparkling water in first class while reviewing her summit presentation. Then a new figure approached, his presence dominating the space like a thundercloud. Officer Marcus Reed, a broad-shouldered airport policeman with a weathered face and a badge that gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, strode toward her, his boots thudding against the tiled floor. His name tag was slightly crooked, and his hand rested near his holster, where a pair of handcuffs dangled, catching the light with a menacing glint. He took Lauren's license from the TSA officer and held it up, squinting at it like a detective inspecting evidence, his lips curling into a skeptical frown. "Lauren Harper?" Reed asked, his voice gruff, the kind of tone that brooked no argument. He flipped the license over, examining the hologram with exaggerated scrutiny. "We've got an issue. This ID is coming up as invalid. Care to explain?" Lauren's stomach tightened, a knot of unease forming, but she kept her tone steady, her voice clear and measured. "I'm not sure what you mean, officer. That's a valid California driver's license. I've traveled with it dozens of times without problems." Reed's lips curled further, a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Valid, huh? Our system's saying it's flagged for fraud. We've had a rash of fake IDs lately, people trying to sneak through with stolen identities. You wouldn't be one of them, would you?" The accusation jolted her, a sharp sting that cut through her calm. Lauren's eyes narrowed slightly, but she held her composure, her years of boardroom battles kicking in. "No, officer, I'm not sneaking anywhere. That's my real ID. If your system's flagging it, there's an error. I'd be happy to help you resolve it." Reed didn't flinch, his gaze hard and unyielding. "We don't take chances with fraud, ma'am. If this checks out as fake, you're looking at detention, and that's just the start. Step over here." He pointed to a small curtained-off room, a secondary inspection area tucked behind the gate, its heavy drapes a dull gray that seemed to absorb the light. Lauren felt the weight of 100 eyes on her, a palpable pressure that made her skin prickle. Passengers had slowed, some whispering to their companions, others pulling out phones to record, their lenses glinting like predatory eyes. The terminal's energy shifted, a blend of intrigue and unease, the kind of atmosphere that precedes a viral moment. She took a deep breath, weighing her options. She could demand a supervisor, but that might escalate things, turning a minor issue into a spectacle. For now, cooperation seemed the quickest path to resolution. "All right," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. She followed Reed, her carry-on rolling behind her, its wheels humming softly against the floor. As she moved through the crowd, a young man in a hoodie met her gaze, offering a subtle nod of solidarity, his expression a mix of sympathy and anger. A middle-aged woman with a floral scarf muttered to her companion, "They're always targeting someone, always the same people." Lauren caught the words, and a flicker of anger stirred in her chest, a quiet ember that threatened to flare. She wasn't someone. She was Lauren Harper, a woman who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd fought for every inch of her success. But she pushed the thought down, focusing on the moment, on getting through this ordeal with her dignity intact. The inspection room was stark, a cold utilitarian space that felt more like a holding cell than an office. The walls were a dull beige, scuffed and peeling at the edges, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. A metal table sat in the center, its surface scarred with scratches and stains, flanked by two wobbly plastic chairs that creaked under the slightest pressure. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made the room feel smaller, more oppressive. Reed motioned for her to sit, his gesture curt, almost dismissive. A second officer, a lean woman named Officer Diaz, stood by the door, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable, her dark eyes flicking between Lauren and Reed. Reed placed Lauren's license on the table with a deliberate thud, the sound echoing in the small space, and leaned in, his hands braced on the edge, his knuckles whitening. "Let's start with the basics," he said, pulling out a notepad, his pen poised like a weapon. "Full name, address, date of birth." Lauren answered calmly, her voice clear, each word enunciated with precision. "Lauren Michelle Harper. I live at 5800 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles. Born March 18, 1983, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Purpose of travel?" Reed asked, his pen scratching against the paper, the sound grating on Lauren's nerves. "Business. I'm heading to Dubai for a summit." "Alone?" "Yes." Reed picked up her license again, holding it to the light, tilting it back and forth as if searching for a hidden flaw. "This laminate looks off. Could be tampered with. And the system's flagging your name as a match for a revoked ID. You ever lose this or report it stolen?" Lauren exhaled slowly, keeping her frustration in check, her hands resting calmly in her lap. "No, officer. I've never lost it or reported it stolen. That's my ID, issued by the state of California. If your system's flagging it, there's a mistake. Can you verify it with the DMV or another database?" Reed's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "I'll decide how we proceed, ma'am. You got any other IDs? Passport? Another license? Maybe something you're not telling us about?" The implication stung, a sharp jab that hit a nerve. Lauren's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone professional, refusing to let him see her rattled. "I have a passport in my bag, but I didn't need it for this leg. My driver's license is sufficient. You can check my boarding pass, my credit cards, anything you need. I'm not hiding anything." Reed leaned back, his smirk returning, a predatory glint in his eyes. "We'll see about that. Diaz, run her name through the system again and search her bag." Officer Diaz nodded, stepping forward to take Lauren's carry-on, her movements methodical, almost robotic. She unzipped it and began laying out its contents with precision, placing each item on the table as if it were evidence in a crime scene. A laptop in a carbon fiber case, a charger with a neatly wrapped cord, a leather-bound planner embossed with Lauren's initials, a folder of summit proposals stamped with "Confidential," a stack of business cards, a toiletry kit with travel-sized products, a reusable coffee cup with Horizon's logo, a pair of noise-canceling Bose headphones, a silk eye mask, and a small journal with a fountain pen tucked into its spine. Lauren watched, her heart pounding but her expression neutral, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from trembling. She'd been through security checks before, but this felt invasive, personal, as if Reed were trying to strip away her dignity piece by piece. Reed picked up a business card, holding it between his fingers like a poker chip. It read, "Lauren Harper, founder and CEO, Harper Innovations." He raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. "CEO, huh? What's Harper Innovations?" "It's my consulting firm," Lauren said, her voice steady, though she felt a flicker of unease at his tone. "We specialize in sustainable business strategies and global partnerships." Reed snorted softly, a derisive sound that grated on her nerves. "Fancy title. Doesn't mean your ID's legit." He flipped through her planner, pausing at a page with detailed notes about Horizon Airlines Dubai expansion, his eyes lingering on the handwritten figures and timelines. He didn't comment, but his expression darkened, as if he sensed there was more to her than she was letting on. Instead, he opened the folder of proposals, scanning pages marked "Confidential" and stamped with Horizon's logo, his fingers lingering on the edges of the paper. Lauren tensed, her heart rate spiking. Those documents outlined the Dubai deal, sensitive negotiations with proprietary data she didn't want exposed, especially not to someone like Reed, who seemed more interested in intimidation than procedure. "Those are private business documents," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence, her eyes locked on his. "I'd prefer you not copy or share them unless it's absolutely necessary." Reed's gaze snapped to her, his eyes narrowing, a flash of anger crossing his face. "You telling me how to do my job? If you're hiding something, I'll find it. Don't test me." Lauren closed her eyes briefly, centering herself, her hands tightening in her lap. "I'm not hiding anything, officer. I'm just asking you to respect my privacy." Diaz, typing at a laptop in the corner, spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. "System's slow, Reed. I'm running her name through the federal database, but it's lagging. Could be a glitch." Reed grunted, clearly unsatisfied, his fingers drumming on the table, a restless, impatient rhythm. He turned back to Lauren, his voice low and menacing. "Let's say this is a glitch. You got any aliases? Dual citizenship? Maybe a second ID you forgot to mention? We've seen it all. People smuggling, identity theft, human trafficking. You name it, I've caught it." The accusation was absurd, but Lauren felt the weight of it, a heavy, suffocating pressure that made her chest tighten. She recognized the undertone in Reed's voice, the same mix of suspicion and prejudice she'd faced before, in corporate boardrooms, at industry conferences, even in everyday life. It was the assumption that a black woman with her poise, her success, her confidence must be deceiving someone, must be hiding something sinister. She forced herself to stay calm, her voice steady, her words measured. "I have one identity, officer, Lauren Harper, U.S. citizen. That's it. Check my travel history, my credit cards, my passport. It'll all match." Reed didn't respond, just stared at her, his eyes boring into hers as if waiting for her to crack, to reveal some hidden truth. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, the buzzing lights amplifying the tension. Lauren's phone buzzed in her purse, a faint vibration that she didn't dare acknowledge, not with Reed watching her every move. Diaz's laptop beeped, and she leaned in, reading the screen, her brow furrowing. Still nothing conclusive. The system's showing a partial match for a revoked ID, but it could be a data error. I'm cross-referencing now. Lauren seized the opening, her voice firm, her patience wearing thin. If it's a data error, can you call a supervisor or contact the DMV directly? I have a flight to catch, and this is starting to feel like harassment. Reed's face hardened, his jaw clenching, a vein pulsing at his temple. Harassment? You're lucky I haven't cuffed you yet. People like you think you can talk your way out of trouble. If this ID's fake, you're not going anywhere except a holding cell. The threat landed like a blow, a sharp, visceral reminder of the power imbalance in the room. Lauren's hands clenched in her lap, her nails digging into her palms, but she kept her voice steady, refusing to let him see her fear. I'm cooperating fully, officer. I've given you everything you asked for. If you're going to detain me, I'd like to speak to a supervisor. Reed leaned in, his voice low and menacing, his breath hot and sour. You don't call the shots here, ma'am. I do. And if I find one shred of evidence you're lying, you're done. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on, a palpable force that pressed against Lauren's chest. Diaz shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between Reed and Lauren, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as if unsure what to do next. Outside, the terminal buzzed with activity, announcements, footsteps, the hum of conversation. But in here, time seemed to crawl, each second stretching into eternity. Lauren's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of options and consequences. She could end this now, call her board, her lawyer, or a contact at the FAA who'd worked with her on aviation regulations, a woman named Cynthia who owed her a favor after Horizon sponsored a safety initiative. As Horizon's CEO, she had the power to make this disappear with a single phone call, to turn the tables on Reed and expose his overreach. But a part of her wanted to see how far this would go, to test whether the system would correct itself or if Reed's bias would prevail. She was tired of being judged before she could even speak, tired of the assumption that her success, her presence, her very existence was somehow suspect. Meanwhile, at Gate C9, the delay was causing a ripple effect, a growing wave of frustration that rippled through the crowd. The gate agent, Jessica, announced that boarding was paused due to a security matter, her voice tight with stress as she tried to manage the growing unrest. Passengers grumbled, checking their watches and phones, their irritation palpable. A tech startup founder named Ethan Carter, waiting nearby, noticed the commotion. His curiosity piqued. He'd seen Lauren earlier, impressed by her composed demeanor, the way she carried herself with an effortless authority that made her stand out even in a crowd. Now he recognized her as the one pulled aside, and something about the situation felt wrong, a gut instinct honed by years of navigating Silicon Valley's cutthroat culture. He pulled out his phone and started recording, posting a clip to TikTok with the caption, "Cops targeting a woman at LAX over her ID. This smells like profiling. Airport injustice." Ethan wasn't alone in his concern. A retiree named Helen Grayson, seated near the gate with a crossword puzzle in her lap, whispered to her grandson, Tyler, a lanky 17-year-old with earbuds dangling around his neck. "That woman didn't look like trouble," Helen said, her voice low but firm, her glasses slipping down her nose as she peered over them. "I saw her ID. It seemed fine." Why are they treating her like a criminal? Helen had flown through LAX for decades, first as a young mother traveling with her kids, then as a grandmother visiting her scattered family. She'd seen her fair share of airport dramas, but this felt different, a quiet injustice that stirred a protective instinct in her. She'd grown up in the Jim Crow South, where her father had been harassed by police for daring to drive a car deemed too nice for a black man. The memory still stung, a wound that never fully healed, and watching Lauren now brought it all back. She scribbled a note on the margin of her crossword, planning to tweet about it later, her fingers trembling with a mix of anger and resolve. A group of college students, heading to Dubai for a study abroad program, started a group chat, speculating about the delay, their messages pinging rapidly. One of them, a film student named Javier Ortiz, began live streaming on Instagram, narrating the scene with a mix of indignation and urgency. "This is wild, y'all. They're holding up a flight because of some ID issue, and it's clearly targeting this black woman. We need to call this out." Javier adjusted his phone, angling it to capture the cordoned-off area, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He'd grown up in East L.A., where his older brother had been stopped and frisked more times than he could count, often for no reason other than the color of his skin. Javier had channeled his anger into filmmaking, using his camera as a weapon against injustice. And now he saw a story unfolding, one that deserved to be told. Back in the inspection room, Reed was growing impatient, his frustration boiling over. He paced the small space, his boots echoing in the confined area, a rhythmic thud that set Lauren's nerves on edge. "Diaz, what's the holdup?" he barked, his voice sharp, his hands clenching into fists. "The system's still processing," Diaz replied, frustration creeping into her voice, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm trying the state database now. If it's a glitch, we'll know soon." Lauren spoke up, her tone measured but firm, her patience wearing thin after what felt like an eternity in the stifling room. "Officer Reed, I understand you're doing your job, but you're crossing a line. You've threatened me repeatedly over what's clearly a system error. I'm a U.S. citizen with a clean record. If you can't verify my ID soon, I'm entitled to speak to someone higher up." Reed stopped pacing and glared at her, his eyes narrowing, his face a mask of barely contained anger. "You think you're smarter than me, don't you? I've been doing this for 20 years. I know a fraud when I see one. You're not going anywhere until I say so." The words cut deep, a sharp, searing pain that reminded Lauren of every time she'd been underestimated, every time she'd been dismissed because of her race, her gender, her very existence. She recognized the power dynamic at play, Reed's need to assert control, his refusal to consider he might be wrong, his assumption that she was a threat simply because she didn't fit his narrow worldview. She'd faced men like him before, in corporate negotiations where she'd been the only woman in the room, in pitch meetings where investors questioned her competence while fawning over her male peers, in everyday encounters where her success was met with suspicion rather than admiration. But this was different. This was public, humiliating, and dangerous, a stark reminder of how quickly power could be weaponized against the vulnerable. She felt the weight of every traveler who'd been unfairly targeted, every person who'd been stripped of their dignity at a checkpoint, every story she'd heard from employees and friends, Latino families separated at borders, Muslim passengers searched without cause, black individuals profiled at every turn. She refused to let Reed see her falter. Diaz's laptop beeped again, a sharp sound that cut through the tension like a knife. She read the screen, her expression shifting, her eyes widening slightly. "Reed, hold on. The state database just came back. It's confirming her name, address, everything. The license is valid. No record of revocation or fraud." Reed's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek, his hands clenching into fists. "What about the federal flag?" he demanded, his voice low, almost a growl. Diaz scrolled further, her brow furrowing as she read. "It's odd. There's a note about a high-priority traveler status, something about corporate security clearance and international travel protocols. It's not a red flag, it's more like she's someone significant." Lauren exhaled, relief mingling with frustration, her shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time since she'd been pulled aside. The clearance was tied to her role at Horizon. As CEO, she traveled under special protocols for meetings with global regulators, airline alliances, and government officials, a privilege she rarely invoked, but one that came with her position. But she wasn't about to reveal that yet. She wanted Reed to admit his mistake first, to acknowledge that he'd been wrong, that his suspicions were baseless. Reed looked at her, his confidence wavering, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for the first time. "So it's not fake?" he asked, his tone grudging, his words laced with reluctance. "No, officer," Lauren said, her voice sharp, her eyes locking onto his with a fierce intensity. "It's not. I've been telling you that from the start." He bristled, clearly unwilling to back down, his pride wounded by the revelation. "Doesn't mean you're in the clear. I could still detain you for obstructing an investigation." Lauren stood, her patience gone, her movements deliberate as she rose to her full height, her presence filling the room. "I've obstructed nothing. I've answered every question, provided every document. If you're done, I'd like to board my flight." Diaz cleared her throat, stepping in, her voice cautious but firm. "Reed, the system's clear. We've got no grounds to hold her." Reed's face reddened, his hands clenching into fists. But before he could respond, the curtain parted with a soft rustle. A man in a crisp Horizon Airlines uniform entered, his expression tense, his eyes darting between Lauren and the officers. It was Marcus Jennings, a senior customer service manager at LAX, a veteran employee who'd worked with Lauren on several initiatives. He froze when he saw her, recognition flashing in his eyes, a mix of shock and concern. He knew exactly who she was, the CEO who'd built Horizon from the ground up, the woman who'd personally approved his promotion 2 years ago. But her subtle headshake told him to play along for now, to let her handle this on her terms. "Officers, I'm Marcus Jennings, Horizon Airlines," he said, his voice professional but edged with urgency, his hands clasped in front of him. "We're holding Flight 309 because of this security issue. Can you update me on Ms. Harper's status?" Reed crossed his arms, his posture defensive, his eyes narrowing at Jennings. "She's under investigation for a potentially fake ID. That's all you need to know." Jennings glanced at Lauren, then back at Reed, his expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Harper's a valued customer. I can confirm she's flown with us multiple times with no issues. If it's a system glitch, we have passenger records that might help. Can we expedite this?" Reed's eyes narrowed further, his voice a low growl. "This is a police matter, not an airline one. Back off." Lauren spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension, her words sharp and precise. "Mr. Jennings, thank you. Officer Reed, check Horizon's records. They'll confirm my identity. I'm done with this charade." Reed's phone buzzed, a sharp vibration that made him flinch. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened, his lips pressing into a thin line. "Yes, sir. Understood," he muttered, hanging up with a scowl. He glared at Lauren, his voice tight with frustration. "My supervisor wants this wrapped up. You're lucky, Ms. Harper, but I'm watching you." Lauren didn't flinch, her gaze steady, her voice calm, but laced with steel. "Do your job, officer, but do it fairly." Diaz handed her license back, her tone apologetic, her eyes avoiding Lauren's. "You're free to go, ma'am. Sorry for the inconvenience." Lauren gathered her belongings, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her, her movements deliberate as she repacked her bag. As she zipped up her carry-on, a fire ignited within her, a burning resolve that had been simmering since the moment Reed accused her. This wasn't just about a glitch, a momentary lapse in the system. It was about the way Reed had treated her, like a criminal, not a person, his suspicion rooted in bias rather than evidence. the way he'd leveraged his power to intimidate her, assuming she was guilty because of who she was, because of the color of her skin, the confidence in her demeanor, the very success that defined her. She thought of every traveler who'd faced similar treatment. Latino families separated at borders, Muslim passengers searched without cause, Black individuals profiled at every turn, their stories buried under layers of bureaucracy or silenced by fear. She wasn't going to let this slide, not when she had the platform, the power, to make a difference. Stepping out of the room, Lauren was met with a sea of faces, a crowd that had grown in the half hour she'd been detained. Passengers clapped softly, some offering nods of support, their expressions a mix of relief and admiration. Ethan's TikTok clip had gone viral, racking up thousands of views in minutes, the comments section a flood of outrage and support. "This is disgusting. She handled that like a queen." Javier's live stream had drawn hundreds, with viewers commenting in real time. "This is why we need change. Share this everywhere." Helen approached Lauren, her eyes kind, her hands clutching her crossword puzzle. "You handled that with such grace, dear," she said, her voice trembling slightly, her southern accent warm and comforting. "I'm so sorry they put you through that. My father went through the same thing in the 60s, cops pulling him over for nothing. You reminded me of him, standing tall like that." Lauren smiled faintly, her throat tightening with emotion, the weight of Helen's words settling over her like a mantle. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I appreciate that more than you know." Jennings was waiting at the gate, his expression a mix of relief and worry, his hands fidgeting with a clipboard. "Ms. Harper, She held up a hand, her voice gentle but firm. "Marcus, get the gate staff together. I need a moment." He nodded, ushering the agents to the counter, his movements quick and efficient. The crowd parted as Lauren approached gate C9, her steps measured, her posture radiating authority. Reed and Diaz emerged behind her, Reed's scowl deepening, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He clearly hadn't expected her to command such attention, to turn the tables so decisively. Lauren turned, facing the gate area, her voice rising to carry over the terminal's noise, a clarion call that silenced the murmurs around her. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lauren Michelle Harper." She paused, letting the words settle, her eyes scanning the crowd, meeting the gazes of those who'd witnessed her ordeal. "Most of you don't know me, but I'm not just a passenger on this flight. I am the founder, CEO, and majority owner of Horizon Airlines." A collective gasp echoed through the terminal, a wave of shock that rippled through the crowd like a physical force. The gate agents froze, their eyes wide, their hands hovering over their keyboards. Jennings swallowed hard, bracing for what came next, his clipboard clutched tightly to his chest. Passengers whispered, phones raised higher to capture the moment, their screens glowing in the dim light. Reed's face went pale, his bravado crumbling, his arms falling to his sides as the reality of her words sank in. "I came here today to fly to Dubai to represent my airline and finalize a $2 billion deal that will shape our future," Lauren continued, her voice steady, each word deliberate, resonant. "Instead, I was humiliated by Officer Reed, who accused me of using a fake ID, threatened me with arrest, and treated me like a criminal, all because of a system glitch. Even when evidence proved my identity, he refused to back down. That's not just wrong, it's a betrayal of every traveler who walks through these gates, who deserves respect, dignity, and fairness." The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word, the air thick with anticipation. Lauren locked eyes with Reed, her gaze unwavering, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Officer Reed, your actions weren't about security. They were about bias. You assumed I was guilty because of how I look, not because of any evidence. That's unacceptable, not just for me, but for every person here, every person who's ever been targeted, profiled, or humiliated at an airport checkpoint." Reed opened his mouth, his face reddening, but no words came, his voice silenced by the weight of the crowd's attention, the collective judgment bearing down on him. Diaz stepped back, her expression unreadable, her hands clasped behind her back as if distancing herself from Reed's actions. "This isn't just my story," Lauren said, her voice steady but passionate, her hands gesturing to the crowd, encompassing them in her narrative. "It's the story of countless others who face suspicion and harassment without the platform to fight back. I think of the mother who's questioned about her citizenship in front of her children, the student who's detained for hours over a minor discrepancy, the elderly man who's treated like a threat because of his faith. As Horizon's CEO, I have a responsibility to do better, to lead by example, to ensure that no one, regardless of race, religion, or background, ever feels the way I did today. I will be filing a formal complaint against Officer Reed, and I will work with airport authorities, civil rights groups, and my airline to ensure this never happens again. We're starting a movement, right here, right now, for justice at every airport, for every traveler." Applause erupted, tentative at first, then thunderous, a wave of sound that reverberated through the terminal, echoing off the high ceilings. Passengers nodded, some wiping tears, others raising their fists in solidarity. Javier's live stream exploded with comments, "She's a legend. This is history." Ethan's TikTok hit 1 million views, with hashtags like Horizon Justice and On End Airport Bias trending nationwide, shared by influencers, activists, and everyday travelers alike. A young mother approached Lauren, pressing a small wilting flower into her hand, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My son was profiled last year at this airport. They made him miss his flight to see his dad. You're giving us hope." Lauren turned to Jennings, her voice steady, her resolve unshaken. "Marcus, let's get this flight moving. I'll board when I'm ready." He nodded, scrambling to coordinate with the crew, his clipboard shaking slightly in his hands. Lauren handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, Jessica, who scanned it with trembling hands, her eyes wide with awe. The beep was clear, final, a sharp contrast to the ominous tone that had started this ordeal. Lauren walked down the jet bridge, the crowd's cheers fading behind her, her steps echoing in the narrow corridor. On board, Captain Emily Torres greeted her at the cockpit door, her eyes wide with admiration, her uniform crisp, and her smile warm. "Ms. Harper, it's an honor," she said, her voice sincere, her handshake firm. "I heard what happened out there. We'll get you to New York on schedule, and I promise you a smooth flight." Lauren smiled, her expression softening, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "Thank you, Captain. Let's make this a smooth flight for everyone." In her first-class suite, Lauren stowed her carry-on in the overhead bin, the soft click of the latch a small comfort after the chaos of the terminal. She buckled in, the leather seat cool against her back, and adjusted the privacy screen, creating a small cocoon of calm in the midst of the storm. The cabin crew moved with extra care, their glances a mix of awe and respect, their movements precise as they offered her a glass of sparkling water with a slice of lemon, her usual order, noted in Horizon's system from her previous flights. Word had spread among the crew the CEO was on board, and she'd just taken a stand that would echo across the industry, a moment that would be talked about for years to come. As the plane taxied, Lauren stared out the window, her reflection faint against the glass, her mind replaying the ordeal in vivid detail. The fear, the anger, the triumph, they swirled together, fueling her resolve, a fire that burned brighter with every passing second. She opened her laptop, the screen casting a soft glow in the dim cabin, and began drafting an email to her board, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she outlined a bold new initiative, the Horizon Equity Program. This would be a comprehensive effort backed by $10 million in initial funding to address bias in air travel at every level. The program would include mandatory diversity training for all Horizon staff, from gate agents to pilots, as well as partnerships with advocacy groups like the NOACP, the ACLU, and the Southern Poverty Law Center to overhaul airport security practices. She envisioned bias audits at every major U.S. airport where Horizon operated, independent reviews to identify and address systemic issues. She wanted to fund legal hotlines for passengers facing unfair treatment, ensuring that no one felt powerless in the face of injustice. She thought of the passengers who'd supported her, Ethan with his viral video, Helen with her quiet strength, Javier with his live-streamed outrage, and the countless others who'd faced similar injustices in silence, their stories untold, their voices unheard. This wasn't just about her, it was about changing the system, about ensuring that every traveler, regardless of who they were, could board a plane without fear. The flight to New York was smooth, the plane cutting through the clouds with a gentle hum, the cabin a bubble of calm after the storm at LAX. Lauren sipped her sparkling water, the bubbles sharp against her tongue, and reviewed her summit presentation, making last-minute notes in the margins. But her mind kept drifting back to the terminal, to Reed's sneering face, to the weight of the crowd's eyes, to the applause that had followed her speech. She thought of her mother, who'd passed away 5 years ago, just as Horizon was taking off. Her mother had been her biggest cheerleader, the one who'd told her, "You're going to change the world, baby girl." Even when Lauren doubted herself, she wished her mother could have seen this moment, could have witnessed her daughter standing up, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been wronged. By the time the plane landed in New York for its layover, the internet was ablaze, a digital wildfire that showed no signs of slowing. Clips of Lauren's speech at Gate C9 had gone viral, racking up millions of views across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, shared by influencers, celebrities, and activists alike. Hashtags like Roi Horizon Hero, Roi Justice at LAX, and End Airport Bias trended worldwide, dominating social media feeds and sparking heated debates. News outlets picked up the story, their headlines bold and unmissable. CEO shuts down corrupt cop in epic LAX showdown. Horizon Airlines CEO sparks justice movement after airport ordeal. LAX scandal, CTO's viral speech exposes systemic bias. Horizon's stock surged as travelers pledged loyalty to an airline led by someone who stood for fairness. Their tweets and posts, a chorus of support. Flying Horizon from now on. This is what leadership looks like. Social media influencers joined the cause, sharing their own airport horror stories, tales of profiling, harassment, and discrimination, and amplifying Lauren's message, turning her moment into a movement. At LAX, the fallout was immediate, a domino effect that rippled through the airport's hierarchy. The Los Angeles Police Department placed Reed on administrative leave within hours, pending a full investigation, their press release terse but telling. "We take allegations of misconduct seriously and will conduct a thorough review." Reports surfaced of prior complaints against Reed, incidents of racial profiling, verbal abuse, and excessive force that had been buried under layers of bureaucracy. A flight attendant named Maria Alvarez came forward, alleging Reed had once threatened her with arrest for speaking Spanish to a passenger, claiming she was disrupting the peace. A college student named Malik Johnson shared a video of Reed confiscating his vape pen, detaining him for hours until it was proven legal, his voice shaking as he recounted the humiliation. A mother named Aisha Khan recounted how Reed had questioned her citizenship during a random check, leaving her in tears as her children watched, their small faces etched with confusion and fear. The evidence piled up, painting a picture of a pattern that could no longer be ignored, a systemic failure that had allowed Reed to operate unchecked for years. Lauren's complaint, backed by the viral video evidence and a growing chorus of voices, sparked a broader reckoning, a seismic shift that reverberated beyond LAX. The airport authority announced a task force to review security protocols, with input from civil rights leaders, airline executives, and passenger advocacy groups. They promised transparency, accountability, and change, their statements a direct response to the public outcry. Horizon Airlines pledged $10 million to fund the equity program, a commitment that earned praise from activists, customers, and industry leaders alike. Lauren joined virtual town halls from her hotel in Dubai, sharing her story and listening to others, her laptop screen filled with faces from across the country, travelers, activists, and policymakers, all united by a shared goal. She launched a podcast series, Airports of Equity, featuring travelers' experiences with discrimination and expert insights on reform. Each episode a deep dive into the systemic issues plaguing air travel. The series topped charts within days, drawing millions of listeners, sparking debates on national TV, and inspiring op-eds in major publications like The New York Times and The Washington Post. In Dubai, Lauren closed the merger deal, securing Horizon's expansion into Asia-Pacific, a triumph that felt bittersweet in the shadow of her LAX ordeal. She stood in a sleek conference room overlooking the Burj Khalifa, shaking hands with Emirati executives, their smiles warm, but their eyes curious. They'd seen the viral video, read the headlines, and wanted to know more. Lauren shared her story briefly, framing it as a call to action, and proposed a global alliance for fair travel standards, an initiative that would unite airlines, airports, and governments in a shared commitment to equity. The executives were intrigued, their nods a promising start, and Lauren left the meeting with a signed contract and a renewed sense of purpose. But her focus remained on the bigger picture, on the movement she'd ignited. She collaborated with tech firms to develop AI tools that flag system glitches without human bias, ensuring no traveler faces what she did, their algorithms designed to prioritize accuracy over assumption. She met with civil rights leaders, hosting roundtables to brainstorm policy changes, their discussions a blueprint for reform. Back in LA, she returned to LAX weeks later for the opening of Horizon's new Equity Lounge, a space designed for comfort and advocacy, with free legal hotlines, bias reporting stations, and a wall of stories, testimonials from travelers who'd faced discrimination, their words, a testament to the need for change. The event drew press, passengers, and activists who'd followed her journey, their faces a mix of hope and determination. Standing before a green ribbon symbolizing sustainability and justice, Lauren gave a speech that echoed her Gate C9 moment, her voice steady, her words a rallying cry. "This lounge isn't just about luxury," she said, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, her hand resting on the ribbon. "It's about creating a space where every traveler, regardless of race, religion, or background, feels safe, respected, and heard. My experience here taught me that change starts with accountability, with listening, with action. We're building a future where no one is judged at the gate, where every journey begins with dignity. The crowd roared, cameras flashing, their applause a thunderous wave that filled the terminal. Reed was gone, his career in ruins, a quiet casualty of his own actions, his name a footnote in the larger story of reform. But for Lauren, the victory wasn't personal. It was collective, a shared triumph for every traveler who'd ever been wronged, every voice that had been silenced. She watched passengers in the lounge, families sharing snacks, students charging their laptops, executives sipping coffee, moving through the airport with ease, their faces free of fear. For them, LAX was a gateway to the world, not a battleground, and Lauren vowed to keep it that way. Months later, the Horizon Equity Program expanded nationwide, with Horizon partnering with 20 major U.S. airports to implement bias training and technology upgrades, their efforts a model for the industry. Lauren testified before Congress, advocating for federal oversight of airport security. Her testimony, a powerful call for systemic change. Her words broadcast live on C-SPAN, shared across social media, and debated in living rooms across the country. Her story inspired a documentary, Gate to Grace, directed by an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, which premiered at Sundance to standing ovations, winning awards, and raising millions for advocacy groups. The film wove Lauren's story with those of other travelers, a tapestry of resilience and resistance that moved audiences to tears. Its final scene, a montage of airport protests, policy changes, and Lauren cutting the ribbon at the Equity Lounge. Lauren received letters from travelers, some thanking her, others sharing their own struggles, their words a reminder of why she'd taken a stand. A young girl named Amara wrote, "I saw you on TV, Ms. Harper. I'm black like you, and I want to be a pilot someday. Thank you for making airports safer for me." Lauren framed the letter, hanging it in her office next to a photo of her mother, a quiet tribute to the women who'd inspired her journey. And that, dear viewers, is the extraordinary tale of Lauren Harper, a CEO who turned a moment of humiliation into a revolution for justice, a movement that reshaped an industry and gave a voice to the voiceless. From a tense standoff at LAX to a global call for equity, her story proves that one voice, armed with courage and conviction, can transform the world. If this journey of resilience, hope, and change inspired you, hit that like button, share it with everyone you know, and subscribe for more stories that light the way to a better future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.